He didn't stalk his victims. In fact, he didn't even know their names. He would build kill kits, buried them years in advance. He flew across the country, murdered strangers at random, and then vanished into the night. This isn't just a story of a serial killer. It's a story of how evil planned ahead and got away with it for over a decade. This is a case of Israel Keyes, the most methodical serial killer in American history. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Oh yeah. In case you are new here, hi, my name is Anna. I am a certified yapper. I could yap all day, all night. Instead of doing that, I hop on here twice a week, every single week on a Wednesday and Sunday, and I talk to you about a true crime case that is keeping me up at night. Because if it's on my mind, surely it needs to be on yours. Now, if true crime is your jam, I highly suggest you subscribe, get the notification bell on, because like I said, I'm here twice a week, every single week, and it's free. And I don't know about you, but I love free stuff. As you will know from the intro of this video, we are talking about the case of Israel Keyes. I mean, listen, I've put this guy off for a long time because I just can't be bothered talking about him. Like, I don't want to give this guy any more clout. I know this isn't a lesser known case. I mean, it's lesser known to some people, but I know a lot of people will know about him. It has been covered before, but I'm hoping, possibly, maybe, I can maybe shine a light on some new bits. And the thing is, even though these cases are covered a bit more, doesn't mean that the victims shouldn't have their stories told. Which is why I am more than happy to cover lesser known cases, well-known cases, so don't ever be afraid to suggest a well-known case because I'm happy to cover it. It just means I need to do an even deeper dive because I want to tell you things you don't know. I just want to thank you for all of the support on one of my newest videos, the one about is there possibly an active serial killer within the UK? It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and it was crazy to know that so many of you have been thinking about it too. And thank you so much to everyone who's new here, who's just subscribed through that video. There will be a follow-up video coming regarding that one. I know there's been lots of comments about other young women, other young men. All across the world, this kind of thing is happening. I'll do as many follow-up videos as I need to make sure we can cover the victims. Anywho, without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the bone-chilling, horrifying, infuriating case of Israel Keyes. So I have to say, I was actually quite surprised when I realised that there's a lot of people who don't know about Israel Keyes. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's coverage online. You've likely seen a video about him or, you know, a podcast of some sort. But there are many people who have no idea who Israel Keyes is. And to be honest, that's exactly how this monster wanted it. He didn't want any kind of media circus, there was no manifesto, there was no pattern, there was no standard victim that he would target. He didn't want any twisted fame, he just wanted to commit clean, calculated murder. And this is exactly what this evil monstrosity weirdo of a man would do. He would operate very quietly across the United States, killing and targeting anyone and everyone. There was no patterns, no clues, and honestly no reason other than the fact that he wanted to. And as always, to understand the monster, we need to meet the boy. Don't get me wrong, he was definitely evil, but his upbringing did not help. So, Israel Keyes, he was born on January the 7th of 1978 in Richford of Utah. And if I'm honest, this guy's childhood reads more like the beginning of a manifesto or horror novel than it does a birth certificate. Israel was the second of 10 children, and he was born into a deeply fundamentalist, isolated, off-the-grid family. So Heidi and John Jeffrey Keyes, their parents, they had their own way of doing things, and I'm not convinced it was the best way. I definitely think there is far better parents out there, or at least I hope so. And they didn't just homeschool their children, they had actually decided that they wanted to remove their children from any sort of modernised society. They had no electricity, no running water, no vaccines, and honestly, some of them didn't even have birth certificates. As I stated in the beginning, they were fiercely fundamentalist, they were anti-government, and they believed that the modern world, the modern way of living, would lead their kids astray, and they stated that it was evil and a trap. Now, Heidi and Jeffrey, apparently they believed that the end times were coming, that apocalyptic, preparing, underground bunker, those kind of vibes. Now, when Israel was young, they had moved the family to Colville of Washington. They had moved to an isolated, desolate, forested area that was near the Canadian border, and they built a one-room cabin for all 10 of them. Sorry, all 12, including the parents. A one-room cabin, and they built it with their bare hands. It is literally like the Alaskan bush people. Have you watched that on Discovery Plus? Because it's actually a very, very good show. Guilty pleasure. But they were living off the land as a family. They were growing crops or, trying to find some in the woods. I'm not entirely sure. But for 12 people to be in this small isolated cabin, I mean, surely you would get cabin fever. Now, this family, they had completely immersed themselves and their children into Christian identity ideology. This is a twisted and racist offshoot of Christianity that believes that white people are the true chosen ones. And that makes me sick to my stomach. We've spoke about it on this channel before. Things I cannot stand is this white supremacy crap. No one is better than anyone. I don't understand why we judge by skin colour, ethnicity. It will never, ever, ever make sense to me. And if I see any of that kind of crap in my comments, which I'm disappointed to say I seen in the last video, those comments will be getting deleted. We're not doing that here. And honestly, when you think it can't get any worse than what they're already up to, just down the road, down the little isolated forest road, was the Kehoe family, the infamous white supremacists who were tied to the Aryan nations and domestic terrorism. And the Keys, the children, they grew up playing with the Kehoe children, which, as I'm sure you can guess, is not your average play date, and I don't really want to know what sort of games or imaginary things they were up to. But this was the kind of world that Israel Keys had been brought up in, full of bigotry, hate and guns. It wasn't just normalised. That was gospel to them. So by the time that Israel becomes a teenager, he completely rejects his family's religion. He claims around the age of 14 that he is an atheist. But I have to say, the rejection of the family's idea of religion, that didn't bring empathy into the picture or, being a decent human being. Instead, it seems the only thing that he actually kept from his childhood was the emotional cold detachment that he had. Oh, and let's not forget his early signs of sadism. And I am just going to insert a little trigger warning here because I am very, very briefly going to talk about animals being hurt. I'll do a timestamp up on the screen if you don't want to hear this bit. I would skip it. It's on screen for you. You've had your warning. And now I'm going to get into it. And honestly, I wish I didn't have to because it literally breaks my heart. So Israel Keys, as many of these other monsters do, he had started hurting animals in the woods when he was a young child and also when he was a teenager. He admitted that this wasn't something he did out of morbid curiosity, it was something he did out of control. Because you'll see that Israel Keys, the thing that matters most to him in his sad little pathetic life is being in control. This pathetic monster, he had tied a cat to a tree using a parachute cord, and then he shot the cat with a revolver pistol and just watched it die. And honestly, the torture of any animals is sickening, but I'm sure you'll agree yourself when you have an animal of the same that is being hurt or abused in these cases, it just cuts really deep. I have 2 little cats who are my absolute world and they're just so precious. Like, the fact that someone could hurt something so small and defenseless is just horrendous, but again, this is what these monsters do. They're looking for people their entire lives to hurt, abuse and torture and possibly kill. Israel Keyes would also brag that when he was a teenager, he would frequently break into neighbours' houses. He done this just to see if he could. He said that he wanted to explore people's lives. He wanted to see if he could do it without being caught. He'd find guns, cash, he would learn their routines, and he would leave everything untouched. Until later when he started sneaking a few guns. But again, it was this control. It was this feeling of, I'm in your house and you don't know about it. I can watch you. I know your daily life and you have no idea. He thrived on that control. And this wasn't him thrill seeking and looking for a bit of excitement. He was training for his future. So then around the age of 20, Israel Keyes decided he was going to join the US Army, and he would end up serving in the army from 1998 till 2001. 3 years of service. And here's the twist, okay? Could not believe my ears, flabbers be gasted, because tell me why this man, his record while serving, clean, pristine, not a speck on it. He was described as being quiet, he was competent, he was respectful, and he was obedient, which is strange. He was stationed in Egypt, Fort Lewis of Washington, and Fort Hood of Texas. He even wound up earning an Army Achievement Medal. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why he's behaving here, and I don't know why he's actually achieving stuff. But it's not what he wanted to do though. You know, he didn't want that. He was like, oh, the medal's great. Love a little bit of gold round the neck, a little bit of drip. But ultimately, he was more interested in being a full-time sadist. Soldiers who were stationed alongside him, they remember him as being quite a heavy drinker, and apparently he was also into horrorcore rap. Never heard of that in my life. If I can find some that's like non-copyright, I'll insert it, but I've never heard of horrorcore rap in my life. So this is what I found online. It says horrorcore rap is a subgenre of hip-hop characterised by its dark, often violent and macabre lyrical content and imagery. It frequently incorporates themes of horror, the supernatural and the occult, drawing inspiration from horror films and literature. So this is what our wee boy Israel Keyes was into. It's not as strange as I thought it would be, but I also don't know if I'll be diving in the deep end and listening to it myself, to be honest. And whilst they were a bit like, oh, okay, I mean, that's like strange taste, it never raised a red flag. They didn't think, oh my God, this guy's a weirdo. They just thought, oh, his interests are a bit different. He likes, more alcohol than the average person. He was also described during his time in the army as being a bit of a loner, but it is speculated that this is due to the fact that he didn't want to be around people that he couldn't control all the time. So going back to 2001, he has left the army, he is no longer serving, and this is when he would start planning something very important to him. Wasn't a wedding, it wasn't a family member's funeral, it wasn't a day at the zoo. He was planning his very first murder. Because, while some people might bring back souvenirs from where they've been stationed, Israel Keyes, he came back with skills. A particular set of skills that he could use in the ways that he wanted to.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
And whilst we're saying that this would be his first murder, I do have to say that Israel Keyes, he would later hint, very smugly might I add, that he had actually killed for the very first time when he was around 18 between 1996 and 1998. And it was believed that he could possibly have been the murderer of 12-year-old Julie Harris. She was a Special Olympics champion, she was a double amputee, she was this incredibly inspirational little girl. And devastatingly, this little girl's body would be found dismembered in Colville in 1996. She had been reported missing after not returning home when she had went out to ride her bike. this bike would later be found discarded in the woods. Whilst Israel Keyes has never admitted and confessed to this murder, this is the one that police believe he could have committed based on his location at the time and also the timeline that he had provided for the events. And the thing that really drove investigators to believe that he could possibly be the murderer of this little girl was the fact that when the police showed him a photo of her, he just stared at it and smiled this grotesque, inhumane smile. And it seemed like to detectives in that moment that he was almost reliving the crime in his head. So by 2001, Israel Keyes, he has settled in Washington State. He's kind of getting odd jobs, especially in like the construction kind of area, handyman work. And it seemed as though he was living pretty quietly, to be honest. He had even fathered a daughter in 2002. He had himself a girlfriend, which, how did that happen? But it happened. From the outside looking in, Israel Keyes appeared What? Israel Keyes appeared to be just another bearded contractor in a pickup truck. But internally, this was very different because he had made a private vow or a private promise to himself. Because he had later told the FBI, "I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let the urges control me. I'd control them. Plan every detail, leave nothing to chance." And this is the whole thing. These murders, the crimes that he committed, they weren't about rage or this temperament that he had. It was all about control. And for the next decade, this man, he would operate with surgical precision. Now, by the time that Israel Keyes had decided to murder again, he had chosen a completely new way to murder, one that the FBI, they weren't that familiar with either. Because Israel Keyes, he didn't have a victim type, he didn't have a location pattern, they couldn't use social media to track him. He would fly to random cities, rent cars, drive thousands of miles, even if it meant driving back the way he came via plane. He would dig up kill kits that he had literally buried years before and then hunt strangers like prey. And it was quite easy for him to go undetected because of the points that I've stated, but he also wasn't some twitchy-eyed weirdo in the basement. You know what I mean? This guy was a father, he was a boyfriend, a business owner, he wore Carhartt and drank coffee like the rest of the population. So in 2007, Israel Keyes decides he's going to move to Anchorage in Alaska. Now the good thing about Alaska, especially in Anchorage, is that being isolated and going off the grid for a couple of weeks, no one bats an eye, okay? It's actually kind of expected. People move to Alaska, to Anchorage, for the peace and quiet. Once he had moved there, he opened his business, Keyes Construction, and like I said earlier, he was basically offering handyman work to people about the town. He was, a jack of all trades, master of none. And he was known to locals as being very polite, very soft-spoken, very skilled within his work. He'd show up on time for his business, he would get the job done, occasionally crack some kind of dry dad joke, and that was it. There was nothing spectacular about this guy. There was nothing that caught your eye or caught your attention because he was just so mundane. I mean, everything about him. His looks, personality, he's vanilla. As I mentioned, he was a father. He was raising a daughter, which is honestly crazy to me that these monsters have children and they'll raise their son or their daughter and be so kind and loving toward them, and yet they're some of the most vicious animals and monsters that you would ever find. His girlfriend and his daughter had no idea who he truly was. But neither did anyone else. He had been able to meticulously build up this very clean-cut image, but this clean-cut image that he had built up, that was a disguise. He was laying out a blueprint, and honestly, quite literally, because he was working out a kill map. He was using Google Earth to have a look and see where the best places would be for burying bodies or throwing bodies away, and also burying his kill kits. His signature move, I guess you could call it, was he would travel around. He would travel around the country with these big 5-gallon Home Depot buckets These buckets that were filled with rope, knives, guns, Drano, zip ties, cash, disposal tools and silencers. He would bury these in random places. These were scattered everywhere. You could find them behind rest stops, under a rock, in the woods near trailheads, and then he would just wait. And sometimes he was waiting for years before he would strike. And when the time felt right, when he felt as though he wanted to find a victim, he would just buy a plane ticket, fly wherever he wanted to go. He would rent a car, drive thousands of miles just to find his kill kit that he had buried that's closest to his location. And then he would hunt for a random victim. And whilst all of us are literally thinking, right, what the hell am I going to watch on Netflix tonight? This guy, he's digging up a bloody murder kit from under a park bench in Vermont. And I hate to say it, but Israel Keyes, he wasn't chaotic. He was a complete opposite. He was so meticulously organised. He had rules that he would follow, and that was to never kill in the same place twice, never kill near home, never use the same weapon twice, don't target children, don't target pets, which is really strange considering what he'd done to a cat in his childhood, and never leave a trace. Now, he had told the FBI, I would go on trips, just me, no phone, no cards, no digital footprint. Sometimes I wouldn't even know who I was going to kill until I got there. And this is the thing, this is what's scary. This man, he didn't stalk, he didn't obsess over one individual. He would just pick a random house that had the lights off, and if the door was unlocked, you were the target. And the FBI had stated, you can't really profile someone like that because you can't predict their next move, their next location, who they're going to target. And one of the most terrifying and horrifying murders, and one of the only confirmed murders, would be the murders that happened in Essex, Vermont. So Israel Keyes, he would fly to Chicago, he rented a car, he would drive 1,000 miles, dig up a kill kit that he had buried 2 years earlier. This had been near an abandoned farmhouse in Essex, and once he dug up his kill kit, he spent the next 2 days basically wandering the streets looking for a target. And he wasn't looking for a person, like you might think. He was looking for a house, the perfect house to break into and torture. And he would choose one that met his rules. No kids, no dogs, and no car in the driveway. This house would belong to Bill and Lorraine Currier, a happy couple who were in their mid-50s. It was June the 8th of 2011 when Israel Keyes would break in through the garage. This left Bill and Lorraine completely startled. They were sleeping in their bed at the time. And it is only a coward, an absolute coward, who targets their victims whilst they're in their most vulnerable state, one of them being when they are asleep. Like, what's wrong, Israel? Were you worried that had they have been awake that you wouldn't have been able to fight them off? Unfortunately, because they were caught off guard, Israel was able to subdue them both. He zip-tied their hands together. He would then force them into their own car and then drove to an abandoned farmhouse. The one, by the way, that he had scoped out in advance. When they had arrived at the farmhouse, Israel, he would separate Bill from Lorraine, which is just devastating because going through something so horrifying and terrifying, I feel like possibly the only comfort you would get is if you were still next to the person who you trust, who makes you feel safe, who is experiencing the same thing. Israel would take Bill to the basement. In this basement there was a stool, and he would tie Bill to this stool before then shooting him multiple times with a .22 pistol, one that had been in his kill kit. Meanwhile, Lorraine, she's held upstairs. She hears these shots. She knows her husband's dead, and she is so freaking brave because Lorraine, she tries to escape. She does not want this to be her end. She tries her best. She's able to smash a window, but Israel Keyes would catch her because, of course, she's cable tied. You can't really break cable ties. I know they say there's all these tricks like the, smashing them down. I've tried that with duct tape. That works, but cable ties, I'm not entirely sure. And if you thought Bill's death was absolutely horrendous, because it was, Lorraine's was just devastating. He would beat her. He then brutally raped her before strangling her with a rope from his kill kit. He said he believed that he was methodical, brutal, and efficient. He would leave both of these bodies, Bill and Lorraine, in this house to decompose, and he just disappeared. And the worst part, this building was demolished before they even realised there was 2 bodies in there. This completely wiped and destroyed any remaining evidence before the police could even investigate. The Couriers would be missing for over a year before Israel Keyes would ever even mention them. And when he finally did, he was able to recall every single brutal, horrific detail with clinical detachment. This was even down to the brand of duct tape that he used on them. He simply stated, "They were just there. That's all. I didn't even know their names." And honestly, this sounds like the real life version of the movie The Strangers. At the end when they're like, "Why did you do this?" And the killer in the mask replies, "Because you were home." That is literally what this is given, and it is horrifying. And this level of control that this idiot needed was just next level. He has just committed double homicide across country, left no evidence, and returned home without anyone suspecting a thing. And even after this Israel Keyes, he's still breaking into houses, not even to kill people, simply to watch them. He would watch them whilst they slept, which is so freaking creepy. Like, imagine seeing that face and thinking it's your sleep paralysis demon. He would also track where families kept things like flashlights, phones, medicines. He would even take tools, like kill kit tools, take it to these people's houses, hide it in their house, and return months later to see if they had been discovered. I mean, to this guy, he treated murder like a sport, and he had even told investigators, "Most people lock their doors and they think that's enough, but it's not." And it's so frustrating, but by 2012, Israel Keyes had built up almost a decade of near perfect crimes. No evidence, no forensics, no suspicions, no headlines. He believed that he was the perfect predator, but that would be the year of his downfall. Because that very year, Israel Keyes, the perfect predator as he called it, the perfect murderer, the one who doesn't get anything wrong, he finally would. He makes a mistake. A teenage girl by the name of Samantha Koenig, she would go missing from a coffee kiosk in Anchorage. And Israel Keyes had no idea that the disappearance and murder of this teenage girl would become his unravelling. So it is currently the 1st of February of 2012. 18-year-old Samantha Koenig, she is working at this little drive-up coffee kiosk all by herself called Common Grounds. This was located in Anchorage of Alaska. This was a freezing cold night. A lot of people were coming to get their coffee fixed, to get a nice warm drink to warm up. And luckily for them, it would be Samantha with this bright and bubbly personality that was there to serve them. Samantha was described by those who love her as someone with a very sarcastic sense of humour, which I just love. I think that's my favourite sense of humour. Like, when I meet people, I am instantly drawn to people with like sarcastic wit. She was also a lover of horror movies. She had a boyfriend who she was seriously planning her future with. She couldn't imagine herself without him in her life. And while Samantha is there working away, dreaming this future, she had no idea that this would all be ripped away from her in an instant. Because right now, at this moment, she was being watched. Waiting outside was a man in a ski mask, holding a gun, waiting for the perfect moment. And this wasn't to commit a robbery. He didn't care about what was in the cash register. He didn't want to steal coffee and a free muffin. This guy was here for the most heinous, evil reasons. And this man, Israel Keyes. Now, Samantha Koenig, she was no stranger to working the late shift. She was no stranger to work herself. It was actually quite common for her. This tiny kiosk, it sat in a well-lit lot. It was sandwiched between a Home Depot and also a fast food joint. It had security systems like CCTV, and customers would come and go every few minutes, but not even that could stop what was about to happen. Because Israel Keyes, he had been scouting for a victim as he does. He didn't follow Samantha. He didn't know Samantha, but she just happened to be the perfect target at the perfect time, because he picked Samantha as his next victim for no other reason than the fact that the store was empty when he turned up. So that night around 8 p.m, Israel Keys, he would enter the store. He was pretending to be a customer. He ordered himself a drink. She, of course, had greeted him in her usual friendly manner. She had made his drink for him. And when they were in the middle of this transaction, he pulls out a .22 caliber Ruger pistol. He said to Samantha, "Turn off the lights and get on the ground." There is actual CCTV footage of this moment when Samantha realises that she's in danger. You see Samantha freeze and then the lights go off. Seconds later, the door opens and they disappear away into the night. I am getting more and more infuriated with the police every single day. Not all of them, I know there is good ones, but let's be honest, some of these cases, the police work is an absolute shit show. They treat Samantha as a runaway. Yeah. She had an argument earlier that day with her boyfriend, and apparently this was enough to make Samantha run away whilst a gun was pointed at her. But the authorities, they have the cheek to assume that Samantha had left voluntarily. And of course, this young girl, her family knew better. They knew their daughter. They knew this wasn't like Samantha. So her father, James Koenig, he starts putting out posters and flyers immediately. He was organising search parties. He was pressurising the media to cover her case, to put this on the news. If the police had taken Samantha's disappearance seriously from the get-go, this outcome might have changed. But because she was 18 years old, they didn't even issue an Amber Alert. It is infuriating. Israel Keys, he had forced Samantha to walk with him to his truck that was in the parking lot, just there waiting on him. He zip-tied her wrists and told her that he was holding her for ransom. He then drove Samantha back to his home. His girlfriend and his daughter, they were out of town. But what a risk to take. He would take Samantha into a shed behind his home, tied her up, and he told her, "If you cooperate, you'll be fine." And this was just complete BS. This was a complete lie. Samantha begged to be let go. She had even offered to help him clean his home, and she'll cook him dinner, and she'll do anything that he wants. She just wants to be let go. This monster sits in front of her, calmly pours himself a glass of wine, before then brutally raping her. After this horrific ordeal was over with, he then strangled her to death. The entire abduction, rape and murder, this all took place just within a few hours of her being taken. And as awful as this is, it just gets worse. Because Israel Keys didn't just rape and murder this young woman, he refrigerated her body. He froze her body in a shed for 2 weeks whilst he went on a cruise with his family. Are you freaking kidding me? He has murdered a young girl, zipped her in a sleeping bag in his shed, froze her body, and then he's away off to the Caribbean sipping on pina coladas like nothing is wrong. And yet again, we are taking it to higher and newer levels of sick and depraved, because this evil monster, when he got back from his little cruise, his little trip in the sunshine, he posed Samantha's corpse. He braided her hair, he applied makeup, he opened her eyes and kept them open with fishing line. He then took a Polaroid photo of her with a newspaper, and this was dated February the 13th of 2012. He then took this Polaroid photo of Samantha, placed it in a plastic bag, attached a ransom note, and dropped it off at some local park. He had then phoned Samantha's boyfriend and her father from a burner phone that he had stole. He instructed them where to go, where to find this ransom note and this photo. This ransom note had demanded that $30,000 be deposited into Samantha's bank account. They were told that if they do this, he will let Samantha go. And it is so sick and twisted because this girl's not even alive. This is all some kind of sick, evil scam. This family, they were never getting their daughter back. This wasn't about money, it was about theatre. This young girl had been dead for 2 weeks, but he could control the narrative. This money was deposited into Samantha's bank account in a desperate attempt to get their daughter back. And Keyes started withdrawing this money from her bank account in small increments here and there, using Samantha's bank card. So he had hit ATMs in Anchorage. He then flew to Arizona to then drive to New Mexico and then Texas, withdrawing money in different states. Because he's thinking, if I travel all these different states, this makes me untraceable. But what this pathetic, idiotic, Dumbo loser did not realise is CCTV cameras, they were catching his every move through every single route. And I bet Israel at this point is wishing that he had been more clued up on tech growing up. You know, maybe he wished his mum and dad had modernised him a little bit to learn how CCTV worked. And fair enough, he's wearing disguises, he's wearing hats, he's got glasses on, hoodies. But authorities now had a multi-state trail and they just needed to wait on him slipping up. So on March the 13th of 2012 in Lufkin, Texas, Israel Keyes, he would pull into a parking lot. Now, there was a state trooper there and they realised that this rental car that this man was in, its plates had been switched. And because he spotted this led to him performing a routine traffic stop. And when he searches the car, he would find some damning evidence. So in the car, they find Samantha's cell phone, Samantha's bank card, a mask, a gun, maps, and a roll of cash that had been dyed with ink from an ATM. Now, because of all of these factors, he would be arrested, but police and investigators, they had no idea who he was or just how evil he was. It would be back in Anchorage of Alaska where police and investigators, they would slowly realise who they were dealing with and the depth of the nightmare they found themselves in. Now, Israel Keyes, he was calm, he was chatty, he was friendly, he was cracking jokes here and there, but he wouldn't confess right away to anything. In fact, he was trying to keep things very vague for weeks. Bearing in mind at this point, Samantha has been reported missing. Why did he have her bank card? Why did he have her cell phone? But he wouldn't speak. And he thought he was tough, you know, again, controlling the narrative. He will decide when he speaks. But there was a few things he wasn't prepared for, and there was a few things that would change his mind. Because like many of these sickos, this one's no different. He couldn't handle the heat. He hated prison. It's almost like they expect to go there for like a wee holiday, and then they wind up realising like, oh my god, this is awful. Now, because he hated prison so much, he decides, listen, I'm just going to start negotiating with the FBI. Again, he's trying to call the shots. So he states, I don't want my name in the media. I don't want my daughter to know what I did. Probably should have thought about that before. And he also wanted to be executed quickly. He stated that he didn't want to have to sit on death row for years. He wanted a quick execution, and more so, he wanted to decide and control what was released in the media. I don't know why this guy still thinks he has any right to anything, but the guy can dream. He had told the FBI, if you promise me anonymity and a quick death, I'll give you more. And of course the FBI, they're going to do whatever they need to do to get this information out of him. So they're like, yeah, sure, Israel, no problem. Whatever you want, hun, you control it all. So Israel Keyes, he starts giving information in little bits, like little increments. And he's loving it because he's thinking, I'm still in control. This is amazing. But this wouldn't last long. But during this time, when he thinks he is in control, he starts trying to show off and brag. He goes through in excruciating, disgusting detail exactly what he did to Samantha. That he refrigerated her, that he posed her body, that he had scammed the family out of $30,000. He even told investigators that he had dismembered Samantha's body and thrown her remains in the Matanuska Lake, which would later be recovered by divers. He then eventually admitted to the murders of Bill and Lorraine Currier, and he simply stated, I liked their house. No kids, no dogs, easy to get in and out. And again, this man has no connection to these victims whatsoever. He's not stalked them, he's not got to know them, he's not even been watching them. The only mistake that family made was that they left their garage door open, something they should be allowed to do within their own home. Now, Israel had been bragging that he had plenty more victims, and when investigators had asked for names, he very quickly and bluntly refused. Israel stated, You're not going to get the names. That's where I draw the line. His confession came only because he was in control of the narrative and because he thought this would get him less time on death row. He still believes in this moment that he is the smartest person in the room. He believes that he has outsmarted everyone, and for a while he had. But now he's been caught. Now he is the Dumbo. Israel had then paused and smiled this grimacing smile, saying, I've done this before. And that is when everything changed, because these local murder cases, they suddenly turn into this nationwide hunt for more bodies. And Israel Keyes, he wasn't just a serial killer. He was one of the most terrifying types because he was patient. Now, he did claim to authorities that he had murdered at least 11 people. But authorities and investigators, they believe that this number is much higher. Over hours of taped interviews, Israel Keyes revealed to the police that he had been operating for over a decade. He had been targeting people whenever and wherever he wanted to. And he had stated that there was plenty more bodies across the country. The first one that he gave up was a young couple in Washington. He also said there was a woman near Tupperware. I actually was just going to say Tupperware. I meant near Tupper Lake in New York. He had stated that there was also an unnamed victim in Texas and that there were several unnamed sex workers within Vermont and throughout. He had said to investigators, you guys don't have a clue how far this goes. I've been doing this for years and nobody noticed. He told them that he would frequent campgrounds looking for solo hikers. He had snatched people from their homes. He even admitted to robbing banks just to fund his travels, and that he had buried kill kits all across the country and used Google Earth to find the best spots. And I'm sorry, but at this point, this isn't even a serial killer. This is like a walking murder algorithm. Now, although Israel Keyes had admitted to at least 11 murders, only 3 have been confirmed. That was the murders of Samantha Koenig, also Bill and Lorraine Courier. Every time police had pressed him about giving up the additional names, allowing them to help victims' families gain some closure, he bluntly turned around and he said, I'm not giving you names. I'm not giving you closure. I don't care if the families know. I like having that power. I mean, he really is just the definition of scumbag. Israel would tease the police. He would draw on maps, and he referred to these as his kill maps, and he would draw a little skull to mark where a body would be. However, some of these skulls, he would say, that one's just a maybe. He is literally playing with them because he knows he can. Now, one agent had said he was unlike anyone we'd ever seen. He studied other serial killers, then intentionally avoided all of their mistakes. Now, the FBI, they don't really know how much they can trust about Israel Keyes, right? Because he sounds like he loves to brag but not give much away. So they're thinking, can we really trust anything he's saying? So they go on a hunt for some of his kill kits in locations where he said they would be, and they're able to find 2. So they find one in New York and one in Alaska, but there was still between 8 and 12 kill kits outstanding. Inside each of these kill kits were to be as expected. There was guns, zip ties, rope, ammunition, drain cleaner, maps, cash, and disguises. This guy is honestly, like, this guy to me, he's as if like Dexter and Bear Grylls had a love child that just hated the world. And in every single interview as time was going on, Israel was always the same. He would be polite, he would crack jokes, he would even mock the agents and demand espressos. And at one point he turns around and he says to the investigator, I'm 2 different people. There's me, and then there's a thing I become when I go hunting. Even when talking about the case of Samantha Koenig, who was a young girl, he showed zero remorse. In fact, he had even admitted that he had watched the TV to see if the media was covering her case. He stated that he didn't want fame, infamy, or people knowing his name, but he couldn't help but admire his own crimes and hope and pray they would get mentioned on TV. And despite Israel Keyes wanting to go quietly, he was starting to lose control because, I mean, how much control can you really have sitting and rotting away in a jail cell? And the longer he sat, the more frustrated he became. He wanted media silence, he wanted the death penalty, and he wanted to be dead before his name became infamous. But the FBI, they keep digging, and very soon the press, they catch wind of this. Whether they were tipped off, I'm not sure. And once the press caught on, his name was very quickly in the headlines, and this is when Israel Keyes decides, one last act of control from me. Let me take this into my own hands. Let me decide how this ends. Now, whilst the world's biggest loser was being held at Anchorage Correctional Complex, he had decided, I'm just going to end it all here. So he decides to slit his wrists with a razor. He then proceeded to strangle himself to death using a bedsheet. And listen, I'm not cut up about this guy dying, right? I think him killing himself was the best decision he's ever made, but I hate that he's took that away from the victims. I hate that it feels like victims' families are not going to get justice. And I hate that he's died feeling like he's in control. Now, he did leave behind a little blood-soaked suicide note? Can we even call it a suicide note? The guy wrote a frickin' poem, right? The poem said, "Your face framed in dark curls like a portrait. The sun shone through highlights of red. What colour, I wonder, how straight will it turn? Plastered back with the sweat of your blood." Listen, I'm no any kind of like Robert Burns. I'm no poet critic, but I'm going to say that needs a lot of work, okay? That is possibly, potentially, the worst poem I've ever read. And you can just tell that this guy was a kind of sleazeball that probably stood in front of his little distorted prison mirror and practiced that. It's incredibly frustrating because Israel Keyes, he was someone who left more questions than he did answers. Who were all his 11 victims? Who were the other victims? How many kill kits remain buried? Could he have murdered overseas during his military service? No one knows, and this guy, he wasn't a typical serial killer with the same victim type, all the victims look the same. This was complete chaos by design. Israel Keyes didn't play by the rules that even some of the sickest murderers in the world do. He didn't target a specific type. At one point though, he did tell investigators, "I never kill kids. I stay away from kids and moms with kids. Other than that, it was fair game." And his victims, they varied in type. They were male, female, young, old, rich, poor. It really didn't matter to him. All that mattered is that he got to murder. When an FBI agent did describe him, they had said the following: "The most terrifying kind of killer. The kind who never gets caught because he's not killing for a reason. He's killing because he can." Now, I do have a few unsolved and suspected victims of Israel Keyes, but again, we don't have names. But I would like to read through them anyway, just in case. You never know who might know something out there. So the first one that he is possibly tied to was a couple from Washington State between 2005 and 2006. Now, of course, Israel, he had hinted at this anyway, but he said that he had abducted and murdered a young couple in Washington State, possibly from the area around Lake Crescent or Olympic National Park. He said that he dumped their bodies in Lake Crescent, a notoriously deep, cold, glacial lake that can preserve remains for decades. Which sounded promising, okay, because he seemed to give a lot of fact. But despite extensive searches and sonar sweeps, nothing has ever been found. Then we have the missing woman near Tupper Lake, New York. This was around 2009, possibly. Keyes had told investigators that he murdered a female hiker or camper near Tupper Lake in upstate New York. He also said that he left her near a shallow grave in the woods and marked the area by memory. Now, the FBI, they did go ahead, they conducted a search, and yet again, turned up nothing. He then, of course, stated that there was multiple sex workers along the East Coast. This was said to be between 2007 and 2010. Now, he did allude to killing at least 2 sex workers during his travels, possibly in Philadelphia, New Jersey, or upstate New York. He said that he had disposed of the bodies in ways that ensured they would never be found. Then we've got a victim in Texas. Now, this date is completely unknown. We couldn't even guesstimate it if we wanted to. So this was during his ATM withdrawals on the run after Samantha Koenig's murder. So Israel Keyes, he had passed through Lufkin, Texas, and this is where he was eventually arrested, but he hinted that he might have killed someone during this leg of the trip. But again, gave no details. And it is unclear whether these confessions are actually confessions or just a manipulation tactic. Now, the FBI, criminologists and profilers, they all agree on one thing when it comes to Israel Keyes. He defied every serial killer category. He studied other killers to avoid their mistakes. He called Ted Bundy an amateur. He called Dennis Rader sloppy. And he even called BTK embarrassing. And listen, yeah, 100%. They're all evil, vicious, vile monsters who, if you want me to cover them, I will, let me know. But, sir, you also got caught. So that makes you an amateur, it makes you sloppy, and it makes you embarrassing. But it was very clear that Israel Keyes, he wasn't modelling himself on these infamous serial killers. He modelled himself after terrorists. Isolated attacks, long gaps, zero emotional connection to the victim, pre-planned logistics, and full deniability. After his suicide in 2012, the FBI, they did make an admission to the public. We believe that there are additional victims, but we may never find them. So police, they believe that there is roughly between 5 to 7 unidentified victims and at least 8+ murder kits that they haven't found. If these murder kits exist, I hope to God that the wrong person doesn't dig them up. Now, the FBI, they also shared one of the most haunting and bone-chilling lines that Israel Keyes had given from his interviews, and that was, "I'm 2 different people, and one of them you'd never want to meet." Because this monster refused to give any names, it is likely that the victims, if they exist, they're most likely listed in cold case databases. Missing persons, accidental drownings, drug overdoses, suicides, and unknown causes. These were families that were given no answers because their loved ones crossed paths with this complete monster and they could never have known. And it breaks my heart to say it, but I genuinely believe that some of these cases, some of these victims might never be named, might never be discovered, and that bothers me because I feel as though that lets him keep the control. Israel Keyes, though, he wasn't this lavish monster hiding in plain sight. He was simply just absence of a pattern to follow, a walking void. And we should study him carefully because if we don't, how the hell do we recognise the next one? This evil monstrosity of a man, he wanted control right up to the moment he took his own life. The next time you hear about a cold case or a missing persons case, or a body found with no cause of death, ask yourself, is it possible that they ran into someone like him? Now, I want to know in the comments down below, do you believe that Israel Keyes could be responsible for possibly other infamous killings, infamous cold cases? Do you think there's going to be other killers like him out there currently operating or operating in the future? And how do you think we stop these killers who leave no trace? Let me know down below. This video today is dedicated to the victims and the families of the victims. The ones that we know and the ones that we don't. I am sending love and prayer their way, and I hope that the victims who remain unknown can one day be named. But my loves, that is it for this true crime and makeup episode. I know this case has been done, so hopefully I was able to add something to it, or just give you a different perspective on the case somehow. If you do enjoy my content, please make sure you are subscribed, get the notification bell on, because I'm here for you twice a week, every single week, Wednesday and Sunday. I would just love more people here. I love the community that we have, and if we could build that even further, would genuinely mean the absolute world to me. I am so grateful and so thankful for each and every single one of you every single day. The ones who have been here from the beginning, the ones who have just joined. Truly, you all mean so much to me. Don't forget to leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think of this absolute pathetic monster. Let me know what other cases you would like me to cover and I'll get them added to the list. But that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person. Do not be a bad person. Stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!